Sorry. Give me on with Beis, 2 lines for the bottom.
Where she's going to be watching it, and he just doesn't want to watch it. See the results. No, you won't. You're going to watch it. But you're going to have nothing else. Nobody's going to want to talk. Don't do any spoilers. I've got plenty to do. You're not going to do it. Do not watch it. Sure, I'm too interested in. No. I'm watching.
Good evening. We're up to Daf Gimel with Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. And this Daf, and the next, and after another 2 Daf further, is the main halachas of how to build the walls of the Succca. It's really kedai to have a very strong understanding of it. So the Mishnah tells us that Succca which is more than 20 amas high, what's the din? Machlekes, very good. We pass and possum. So a person comes to the solution, and what we did is, saw Meir very kindly, I showed him photos, and he uploaded it to the group. Gimel with Beis, 2 lines at the bottom. Those who've got a smartphone can see it on the photos. The truth about it is, Article has some pictures, and most of them it's very easy to picture in your mind. But it's always sometimes it's nice to have a picture. So again, so it says like this: if it was more than 20 amas high, Gimel with Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. So what happened was he wants to make it lower. The coin with sauces with pillows and blankets. Loy have a miot, it's not considered lowered. Raising the floor. There's a picture, it's picture Lamed Gimel. I don't know if you've got it. If you can see the picture, you've got pillows and blankets at the bottom of the floor. It's not hard to picture. So it's not a miot. Why? Top of Daled Amud Aleph. Even if you've decided to leave them there forever, why not? His thoughts are cancelled because of everybody else's thoughts. I mean, since everybody holds that you do not leave your pillows and blankets get ruined on the floor, they'll get wet, they'll get shredded, they'll get dirty. So therefore, nobody would ever leave his pillows and blankets there. So therefore, even if he says, I'm going to leave the pillows and blankets there, his das is bottom. Well, there's a number of places in Shas. But what happens is, if somebody does something which is so strange, we ignore what he says, al das for everybody else.
So the 20 hours is measured inside, not outside.
Right. So therefore, it's measured from the inside. And he put pillows across the entire floor. So now there's an amma floor. So from inside to the Succca is only 19 ammas. It doesn't make a difference. Still possible. Why not? Oh, we'll come down to 1 second. That means whenever we talk about Diras Diras Keva is why the Chachamim said this halacha. But of course, all these things won't change the Diras Diras Keva because sometimes, but the Afa Pikein, Chazal, once they establish it like that. Oh, very good. Oh, you're on board. Pillows and blankets is a material which nobody leaves on the floor. Why not? It's an expensive material. Use it. It's good quality material. Says the Gemara, continues like we should point out. Heaven, if you put straw or bits, like it's 2 lines from the top of Daled Amud Aleph. You put the straw on the floor and you decide to leave it there. Have a miut. So if you've got a sukkah which is too high, you can take straw and put it on the floor. I just want to point out a very small Rashi, but which causes literally dozens, hundreds of pages of words. It's the second line in my Gemara. So you've got a sukkah which is too high, more than 20 times high, so you put straw on the floor and you cancel, you vattel it. What's a good word for bittul? Annul it. Nullify. It's not brilliant to be here, because if here you talk about leaving it on the floor. Abandon it. Okay, abandon it. Abandon is a better word. Okay.
Means you don't care about it.
You don't care. You're leaving it there. You're leaving it there. Says Rashi. Tell me a bit. There are 2 words of Rashi, and you can't imagine how many words with it. Rashi is befib with his mouth, l'shiva for 7 days. Where she saw the words of Rashi, 2 lines to the top. Tell me a bit like befib with his mouth, l'shiva. This is a very, very exciting Rashi. Rashi over here tells us 2 major halachas. Halacha number 1, that when you want to nullify it to the floor, it's not enough to think about it. It's not enough to decide in my mind, you know what, I leave it on the floor. You actually have to say with your mouth, I am now nullifying the straw to the floor. I am now, what's the word did you say? Nullify, not nullify. Abandoning the straw to the floor. If you think it doesn't work. You go Succca and 20 hours high, you put a big layer of straw, dust, stones. It doesn't work. It has to be with your mouth, says Rashi. Second chiddush of Rashi, l'shiva. The first word of Rashi is a chumrah. You have to with your mouth, not with your mind. The second is a major color. That all you're doing is you're only leaving it for 7 days. After 7 days, you're going to take it away. The Ritva comes along and he says, I disagree with Rashi on both points. Why would you need to use your mouth? What's wrong with making a decision in your mind? Everything else in the whole Torah works with your mind. Why suddenly over here does Rashi insist that you say with your mouth, I'm leaving it to the floor? That's one kasha. And he says another thing, Rashi is for 7 days. Why should 7 days be enough? It is true that Sukkot only lasts for 7 days. But that's not the point. It says the Mitzvah, I don't agree with Rashi. If the reason why it's less than 20 amos is because that is part of the floor, if you're planning to move it in 7 days' time, you obviously do not see it as part of the floor, because the proof is in 7 days' time, you're going to use, what do you use straw for? For animal food. In 7 days' time, you're going to give it to my cow to eat for supper. No, says the Mitzvah. It's good for you to please argue. This is where all the achronim stern they will discuss. But 7 days, every sukkah is going to be built for 7 days. But the answer is that is the structure for 7 days. Here, the structure is no good. It's 120 hours inside. The only reason why you want to say it's okay is because you nullify this to the floor, so the floor is being raised. But to call it a raised floor, it has to be forever. Because if it's not, let's say, for example, somebody builds a sukkah for an hour. Is that a kosher sukkah? Of course it is. Let's say a person nullifies it to the floor for an hour. Would that be good? You'll agree with me it's no good. Why not? No, because another reason, because then why can't pillows and blankets be good? A minute ago we said pillows and blankets are no good because the person doesn't nullify it. So you see the fact that you're leaving it there for 5 minutes is no good. It has to be part of the floor. If you decide to leave it there only for 7 days, it's not part of the floor. These 2 words of Rashi, they go on and on. Lemaisa, halacha lemaisa. The Rishonim argue with Rashi definitely about the fib, and they say that in the heart is good enough. So if you've got sukkah which is too high and you decide in your mind it's good enough. Regarding the shiva, is a machlekas in the Shulchan Aruch, how long do you have to nullify it for? And he comes out other nafkividas, but this is just 2 words of Rashi. I get very excited. I always like to see how the Ramban writes about the words of Rashi, that every drop of ink of Rashi, a person should spend 7 days thinking about it. It's what Ramban Akdam ala Torah. Every drop of ink of Rashi, you should spend 7 days thinking about. This is one of the places you see it. Rashi just says, stand a bit low, the fiv, the shiva. 7, it has to be for 7 days. 1 day is not enough. You don't need to do it forever. And the fiv with the mouth. And the Torah argues on both. Okay, so let's get it very clear. Yeah. That's right. Very good. Right.
And you know you're going to use this wooden floor in 7 days
or
something else.
So there you could argue building a whole new floor might be different from just putting straw down. And I'm ready to argue. It's a good question. It's a good question. Can argue. But let's get clear what we've learned so far. If you've got sukkah too high, so you put pillows, it's no good, even if your decision is to leave them there forever. Why? Everybody's das is more strong than you. But if you put straw down and you have a decision according to Rashi with your mouth for 7 days, you'll say, I'm going to leave it for 7 days, it's a kosher. Says the Gemara. Now, again, the Teva bit laviyut. V'chol shekain offer bitloy. Offer is earth. Earth is even more than the straw because people don't use it for anything. Teva ben osir lefanoisoi v'offer stam machlikas abitzim v'abanan. Let's try and get as clear as possible, try to work it out. There are 4 levels when you put something down on the floor. Oh, you're like you do big building projects, so you can tell us these things. There are 4 levels of when you put something on the floor, right? Some people change the carpets and the floorboards every 6 months, but there are 4 levels. One is what we call bitloi. Bitloi, we said, is to abandon it, where you're planning to leave it forever. A stage, the other extreme, is when you intend to move it away, like pillows or blankets. You put it down for 5 minutes. You're planning, or an hour or 2 days even, but you're planning to move it away. So one extreme is when you abandon it. The other extreme is when you're planning to move it away. In between those two extremes, there are two other levels. One level is that you leave it there, and you have no intention of removing it there, but you never abandon it. Meaning like this: you put a pile of earth on the floor, without the decision or the statement, according to Rashi, to leave it there, but you have no intention of moving it there. That is very close to bitloi, but it's not exactly the same. Bitloi is you made a decision. Hey, you made a decision, just not planning. That's called einoi osid lefanoisei. You're never planning to move it. And there's another one, is when we're not sure what you're planning to do with it. You put it there, you put straw on the floor. We don't know. Are you planning to move it or not planning to move it? So now it depends on what it is. Let's do the one inside. Tevin, that's the second line again. Tevin bitloi, where you leave it there, have a miut. V'chol offer bitloi, of course, earth. Tevin v'nosil lefanoisei, but straw which you do not plan to remove, but you haven't actually decided to leave it there. V'offer stam on earth without any thought at all. Machlokes Rabbi Yossi v'Rabbanan, machlokes Rabbi Yisroel. It's not. Beis shemilu tevin tzrovis. So I put put a picture up of it. It's very, very easy to imagine. You've got a house with a dead person inside it. Can you see the dead person inside him? And what happened was, the halacha is, if there's a dead person inside the house, what's the halacha? The whole house is tummy. If there's a tefach, if things on the roof, if you look very carefully on the picture, there's actually, if there's actually a jug on top of the roof, is that jug tummy or not? Oh, there's a tefach space. Right, you can see you got a tower. It's quite complicated basket to the tower. So again, if you've got a dead body in the room, imagine this dead body hanging this room, and you put a jug on this roof, it will not be tummy because you've got tefach space. If you fill up this room with dead bodies, till the dead bodies all reach, or the roof is very, very low, there's not a tefach space, then the things on top of the roof are tummy. How far are they tummy? Adashman, forevermore. So if you're flying, you'll also become tummy, which is the problem with Kohanim nowadays. So now what happened was, if you fill it with pillows or blankets, it doesn't matter because you're going to take them out as if there's a space. What happens if you fill it with straw or tzroivos or pebbles? What actually tells us that all the Shem agree with him is that tzroivos and offer have the same halachic status, because offer is the earth, tzroivos or pebbles, and they have the same halachic statement. So Beis shemilu tevin tzroivos or bitloi mevuto, bitloi en lo bitloi lo, it's not. But Tanya lo abuse meteven ve'enos lefanoisei, straw which you're not planning to remove. However, offer stam is like offer which is without any thought, or bottle. Offer was lefanoisei, how stam teven v'lo bottle, and it's not bottle. So I just say there are 4 levels and 2 materials. We talk about straw and earth. Both of them at the 2 extremes, there's no machlokes. That means if you're planning to nullify, abandon either straw or earth, both Chachamim and Rabbi agree that that's a raising of the floor. Both for Succca, that the Succca is now no longer 20 times high, and for Tumah B'Tara, that the house is full and there's no space of a tefach, and therefore the Tumah goes, it's called Tumah B'Tzutza, crushed Tumah, and the Tumah goes all the way through the ceiling. That is both straw and offer if you're planning to abandon it. Offer and earth and straw, when you're planning to remove it, both Chachamim and Rabbi agree that that's not considered part of the floor. It's not part of the house, and therefore, if the sukkah is too high, it's no good. And that there's no machlokes Chachamim and Rabbi. The middle 2, that means in a case where you either haven't decided to leave it there, but you're not going to take it, or where you haven't thought anything at all. So then it's machlokes Chachamim and Rabbi by offer and by teva, with one exception. And that is, the exception is offer, which case do they agree upon? When you've got offer stam, very good, offer stam, earth which you've not made any decision, that even the Chachamim agree that since at the end of the day you're not doing anything, not planned anything, is considered part of the floor. So it's quite complicated. If you remember, there are 4 levels. That means there's abandoning it, there's leaving it there without the decision to abandon it. There's leaving it there without deciding what you're going to do with it. And there's the decision to remove it away. And there's two main materials, Teven and Offer, and Machlokes Chachamim and Rabbi. And that makes a big nafkimina legabe Succca, to make the Succca had in 20 hours. There's actually this whole sugya came up in Eruvin. Does anybody remember regarding what? I say very briefly because there's actually a lot we shouldn't discuss it over here. If you got two gardens and there's a wall between us or a ditch between us, I'm not allowed to carry from my garden to your garden. What happens if the ditch has been filled with straw and you're planning to leave the straw? Does that now take away the ditch or not? Okay. New sukkah. It was more than 20 amas had the sukkah. V'hutzin, and the ends of the branches, like the thorns, the splinters, they go down within 20 amas. So you've got a sukkah which is more than 20 amas high, but part of the schach, I don't know if you use bamboo canes, it's all flat. But if you use greenery, so what happens is a lot of the greenery goes in. So you made a sukkah more than 20 amas high, and you made the schach out of greenery. So the main roots of the greenery are more than 20 amas high, but the greenery goes in to within 20 amas. So then there's a shayla, if there's more shade within the 20 amas, otherwise it's possible. So if you do the cutoff point at 20 amas high, let's say over here, and enough go below the 20 amas, enough schach is going below the 20 amas, that there's more shade than sun below the 20 amas, so it's kosher, because we imagine as if that is where the schach is. The fact that there's more schach on top doesn't bother us. As long as there's enough schach within 20 amas, it is kosher. Says the Gemara, if not, if there's not enough schach, it's possible. If there's a sukkah which is only 10 tefachim high, and again, there's little branches going down below the 10. If you look in the pictures which we uploaded before the Shiur, they're all there. Then what happens is that if it's only a little bit coming down, let's say you make a very, very low sukkah. Now, as younger, I'd go on Pirchim outings. Rabbi Suffin used to arrange it. I don't know if any of you even remember Rabbi Suffin. He lived on Parkside Avenue. What? We moved to Edsel. And they never had any money. What they'll do is that every sukkah is the same outing. They'll take it to somewhere, abandoned park or something, and they'll say today's special, exciting event would be build your own sukkah. And that would cost them nothing, and then they'd bring us home after a few hours, and that would be their whole outing. And what happened was, none of the sukkahs were really kosher. But I remember one year I went to a certain Mazich Taka, and he found a bridge which went over so he had two walls already, and he put branches across, and then we had like a sukkah, two walls, tried to build a third, and every so often the girl would try to cross the bridge and wonder what in the world we were doing. But the Maisa, the branches would often slope downwards because a lot of the twigs fall in. If the twigs go below 10 tefachim, Rabbi said like this: if the amount that goes below 10 tefachim is not enough to be real schach, that means there's more sun than shade, so it doesn't matter, because just like we said before, that when there's majority schach, that's called schach, but there's minority schach, it's not called schach. So also here, as long as within the 10 tefachim there's only a little bit of schach, it's okay. No, that's an uncomfortable home. A person can't live in an uncomfortable home, and it's not kosher. It's interesting, the Shash over here says, I do not know, and he says, I'm very upset that I don't know, is he doesn't understand why 10 tefachim is kosher. Because he says like this: how high is a normal person? How many tefachim? A normal person is 18 tefachim high. And he says, according to Moshe, that's without the head. Now, if you count 18 tefachim, it means that you can never stand in a sukkah of 10 tefachim. So he says, how can he says, Rabbi says to him that 10 tefachim, when his bit comes down, it's uncomfortable, it's no good. He says that if it's 10 tefachim without anything coming in, is that going to be very comfortable sukkah? You're only going to get in. That he says the only way to get in is to be crawling in. It's the only way to get in. Okay. Yeah, but how will you get in and out? He asks. Yeah. Okay. For short people. Yeah. If it was higher than 20 amos, and you build on it it's like a bench. Opposite the middle wall up the kula. It's got enough to be kosher. It is kosher. Here, this is mamish. This halacha is like the yisod of so much of sukkah. Try and say not just what it says. If you don't have it like this, it got a sukkah. Rashi says most sukkahs in those days had 3 walls, right? So you've got a sukkah which has 3 walls, like a ches. Now we've got a sukkah which is more than 20 amas high. It's on the pictures, but it's also hard to picture it. It says more than 20 amas high, it's no good. So you build a bench across the back wall. And the bench is 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim, because otherwise it's not big enough to be a sukkah. And sitting on the bench, you are less than 20 amas high from the schach. There's less than 20 amas, so it's kosher. Why is it kosher? Because we work over here, you've got a wall on the back wall, plus the 2 walls coming out. So therefore, in fact, you've actually got, if this is the walls of the sukkah, this is the ches, and you make a bench over here, so you've got over here 7 tvachim, over here 7 tvachim, and over here you've got the kosher sukkah. Oh, unbelievable. This is the huge question which they all argue about. Rashi says over here, and I'll tell you something else that says Rashi. The word Rashi to Maschil Shiur, that the whole sukkah is kosher. And he says this is built on the yesod called psal hayotzeh min sukkah. The word psal actually is another word for the word schach. Why is it called psal? Anybody know? Close. Yeah, okay. The Torah, those schach was made from Pesulas, Gern, and Yaakov. You used to make the schach out of the leftover which came over from the grain and from the wine press. So psal is another word from schach, for sukkah. For schach. Psal is another word for schach. The halach is psal hayotzeh min sukkah is kosher. So Rashi says all of this is schach which is coming out of the sukkah is kosher. And the Rishonim argue back and forth and they say that's not true. And this is a very, very big question which needs a lot of eon. When is it considered psal hayotzeh min sukkah which is kosher, when is it not? And most of the Rishonim don't agree with Rashi, Tosfos and others. They say that in fact the only area which is kosher is on top of that platform. But the rest of it is not, because not psal hayotzeh min sukkah. The common case of psal hayotzeh min sukkah is if, let's say, for example, you've got 1 wall, 2 walls, and a 3rd wall, and the 3rd wall is 7 tvachim. But from here to there's no wall. So over here, you've only got 2.5. You've got 1, 2.5 over here, 7 tvachim. That is the area which we usually say that it is kosher. You have to be aware of that. That's what it's a sukkah. So again, so that's the first chiddush over here. The chiddush is that you build a platform. When you're standing on the platform, you're yotza. The Meiri points out, it's quite complicated, that the chiddush, more later goes to the word good asik mechitza. And when you've got a mechitza, which is 10 tefachim below something, we can sometimes imagine the mechitza goes up. He says, obviously this platform was not 10 tefachim high. Because if the platform was 10 tefachim high, you'd have another reason maybe to make it kosher, maybe because of good asik mechitza. So let's say this is I don't know if you can picture it, if the platform is 10 tefachim high, so in the wall of the thing which comes up to the platform, can go upwards maybe. Okay. Next halacha. Also, if you build the bench on the side, so let's say you've got a sukkah over here, which is again 3 walls. Rashi says you used to use the 4th wall open because that's where you'd get in. So you got 3 walls, and you build the platform just over here. So now you've got this wall, and you've got this wall, which is 7 tefachim. There's only 2 walls, and here you've got no wall at all. So you want to use this wall as well. So if it's less than 4 amas from the platform to the wall, we say do for that kuma. If it's more than 4 amas, we don't say do for that kuma. We have to always remember there's 2 things we sometimes say: lovod and do for that kuma. Do for that kuma, you're not allowed to sit underneath the do for that kuma. Here Rashi says, of course, you don't say psal hayotzeh min sukkah. Does anybody know why we don't say psal hayotzeh min sukkah to tell you that over here is kosher? What? No, but you do. You've got the psal, you've got the 3rd wall. But why? But you are sitting underneath schach. Because that's what Rashi said, that because you have to rely on do for that kuma to say that this wall is connecting to the schach, so you're sitting underneath the do for that kuma, so that's not considered psal hayotzeh min sukkah. You sit underneath the wall. So the Maitza, that's the halach is you can't sit underneath that kuma. Lovod, which is less than 3 tefachim, you can actually sit underneath the wall. So if you've got a sukkah, so they told me they spent a very lot of money to make sure, a lot of people have built-in sukkahs, and usually there's more than 3 tefachim from the wall to where the built-in sukkahs begins. Somebody spends a very lot that they should only be less than 3 tefachim. By doing that, he can sit wherever he wants. The problem is, builders will tell us, managing, what they call it, developers will tell us, that you need to put lights around the side. You can't put lights in the middle because you've got the schach there. Lights around the side, and if you go from Chaim Noah's 3 tefachim, it's only 15 centimeters. It's not very. It's 18 centimeters. It's very, very short area. It's very hard to get it. There should be less than 3 tefachim. Another thing we have to do. What? Who? It was much more than 3 tefachim. Much more than 3 tefachim. That was different akuma. One should be aware. There's a famous Ram, which everybody gets thing, is that you can't use different akuma and lavud together. So if you've got a different akuma, so then what happens is if the schach is not touching the wall, it's not kasha at all. I mean, because then you're using 2. Lavud means anything less than 3 tefachim is as if it's joint. So many times when you put schach on the sukkah, it doesn't always reach every corner of the walls. It doesn't matter. So therefore, because it's got lavud, it's within 3 tefachim. If you're relying on different akuma and then you put the schach there, then it's no good. Okay.
Is lavud airspace or is it a wall or is it both?
Both can work. So it goes like this. Imagine this ceiling would fall in. So what happens is you think to yourself, good, I can build a sukkah now. So what you do is wherever the ceiling fell in, you put schach and you got a kosher sukkah. But the problem is it didn't fall in the whole roof, only parts of it fell in. So what do? If there's from the wall to the schach 4 amas psula, so the halacha of dofer akuma already learned in the Mishnah. Why did we do it? There, it's good enough for a wall because the wall was good. The problem was the wall was far away from the schach. Here the wall wasn't any good. What was wrong with the wall? It was more than 20 amas high. If it's more than 20 amas high, so the wall itself was problematic. And the only way that became kosher was only through dofer akuma. So this is a chiddush that you can use dofer akuma for a wall, which is more than 20 amas, to make it that it shouldn't be 20 amas. Again, you've got to look as if a bird's eye view. You've got 1 wall, 2 walls, 3 walls. Here's open. And the walls are more than 20 amas. So you build a bench over here. You build a bench over here. So you've got this wall and this wall. You want to use this wall. So you do a different akuma. But this wall is more than 20 amas high. The halach is, it doesn't matter. Why does it not matter? Because a different akuma can make it less than 20 amas high, and therefore it's kosher. Finally, another halacha. You build a platform in the middle of the sukkah. If there's more than 4 amas in all directions, it is possible. If you build a platform in the middle of the sukkah, and that way it's below than 20 amas, it is kosher. That's the same halacha. That means over here you're using different akuma on all 4 walls. If you've got time to look at the pictures, because I'm running out of time, I'm not going to throw the pictures inside. You look through the pictures, you've got a platform in the middle, you've got more than 20 amas, it's okay. If the wall is less than 10 tefachim, the chokak pot. So you dig a hole in the floor to make it 10 tefachim. If there's a distance of 3 tefachim from the place that you dug into the floor to the wall of 3 tefachim, it is possible. The top of the Beis. Less than 3 tefachim ksheira. The obvious question: why over here, when you dig a hole in the ground, do we have to have only 3 tefachim, which is very small? And why would you build a platform to give you 4 amas? As the more answers like this, that a wall which is less than 10 tefachim is not a wall. It's not a wall. A wall being aside is a mechitza, is a dofen, is a wall. So therefore, once it's more than 20 amas, it doesn't matter. It's a wall. It's too big a wall. So then you can use dofen that kuba to make it that it should connect from the wall to the schach. But if it's less than 10 tefachim, it's not a wall. If it's not a wall, so then if you've got nothing to do with that mitzvah of it doesn't work at all. So therefore, you need it to become a wall. And the only way to make it into a wall is through lavud, so you have to have 3 tefachim. That means when you've got a proper wall and you just want to connect it to the schach, up to 4 amas. When you haven't got a wall, you want to create a wall, then it's only within 3 tefachim. And that's where the shaila came up, which we discussed by the seal. Where if you've got a tzuras pesach and a dofen akuma together, does it work? Because if you hold that tzuras pesach is not a real wall, so they're just like it's like a 10 tefachim thing. So then the problem is, can you connect the 2 together? Will it work? But most of the person says it's okay. Let's think more inside. Hossam, a 3rd line from the top. The Yisroel dofen, there is a wall. To make it to the wall, and if not. It was more than 20 amas high. You build a huge pole, which is 10 tefachim high. The pole is 7 by 7. So you've got like a big pole in the middle of the room. Imagine this schach is more than 20 amas high. But you build a big pole, and on top of the pole is 7 by 7 tefachim. The Gabi Hilchas Shabbos once discussed this. If you put something on a post box on Shabbos, when you walk in the Shiur, let's say you walk on M62, and you see an electricity box, which is 10 tefachim high, and on top of it is like a small space, 4 by 4 tefachim, and you pick something from the M62 and you put it on top of that electricity box, you've been carrying from Shiur into Shiur. Why? Where's the Shiur? Where's the walls? What happens is the walls of the 10 tefachim, they continue, and the walls which below or continue go upwards. That's called sinner kudas bechitza. You lift up the bechitzas. So Abaye thought the same thing over here. You can't compare it to Shabbos. Here the Gabi Succca, you need bechitzas which you can recognize. And when you're sitting on top of this high stand, you can't see any walls at all. The fact that below you there's 10 tefachim in all directions, that doesn't make you notice any mechitzas. Even more than that, we said, if you go in there in the Peak District, sometimes you see these massive rocks in the middle of nowhere. Those rocks are proper Rishus HaYochid because they're 10 tefachim high by 4 tefachim. So you can't onto them is awesome. But that's only Gabi L'Chas Shabbos. Gabi Succca, the mechitzas and the koros, and if there's no recognizable mechitzas, it doesn't work. You take 4 sticks and you put them in the 4 corners of a room, and then you put schach on top. So what's the din? Now there are 2 ways to understand this machlokas. It's good to see the pictures if those who've got the pictures, but there's 2 ways to understand it. This whole sugya goes back and forth in these 2 ways. So the pictures are nun gimel and nun dalet. I'll just try and show it. Here, if somebody put up 4 poles at the 4 corners of the building, and nun dalet is he put it on the roof. There are 2 ways to understand it. One way to understand it is that the walls below the poles are considered to be continuation with the poles. Another way to understand it is that each pole, because it's a big pole, each one's a tefach by a tefach, is considered to be big enough to be considered like the beginning of a mechitza. And since you've got 4 of them, you've got 4 mechitzas. So Yaakov is machshiv a common person. Machlokas as fasakak, the machlokas only by the edge of the roof. The Yaakov savam in a good ask mechitza, so that the good ask mechitza goes up. But when Savi not only good ask mechitza, but emsa gag divakoi psula. If you just stick 4 poles in the middle of the roof, it's possible. Because where's the mechitzas? If you put it at the corners of the roof, so you've got the walls going up to the roof, going further. If you do it to the middle of the roof, it's nothing. The middle of the roof. I mean, he said the machlokas, and Nachman said the machlokas is the middle of the roof. The question is, what about the edges of the roof? Is that everybody holds that it's kosher? Or is the same machlokas in the middle of the roof also by the edges of the roof? Says the Gemara, Teiku, we don't know. Meisving. No, it's Abu Kudesin boys. If you put 4 poles into the ground, the Succca Gabon, the Yaakov Machshav Chomim posted. Well, it's the land, the Ke'emsa Gag Domi, that's like the middle of the roof. Because you've got no walls coming up to it. The Komachshiv Yaakov, Yaakov is Machshiv. To Yufta, to Avuna, to Yufta. Rav Huna said that Yaakov was only permitted it when you've got the walls of the roofs, the walls going up the roof supporting it. That means only when the poles are on the 4 extreme corners of the building, only then is Yaakov Machshiv. Because then you use the walls of the building to continue. But otherwise, if Yaakov says it's possible, says, well, Avuna is wrong. Because we see that the machlokas exists even in a case where the 4 poles in the middle of the ground. To Yufta, Avuna, to Yufta. But Oit says, well, let's be medayek that Avuna is wrong in 2 ways. Avuna said the machlokas, everybody agrees in the middle it is possible. On the edges of machlokas. We've proven that in the middle it's machlokas as well, because in the ground it's like in the middle. Void them so the pligi. But the edge of the roof, the fact that they argue by the middle of the ground, you can be medayek that by the edge of the roof, everybody holds it's okay. And the Huna said that the machlokes is only by the edge of the roof. So it's an argument, it's a question of Huna in two separate ways. They argue in both cases. You've got no proof that I'm wrong in two different ways. It is true that I'm wrong regarding the issue. They argue regarding a middle of a roof? Because the middle of the floor is the same as the middle of the roof, and then they do argue nice and every holds is possible. But you can also say that they argue in other cases as well. The fact that they only mention the middle of the floor is just to prove the strength of Rabbi Yaakov. Now the Gemara here is going to say like this. Here we're talking about somebody takes 4 poles round. This is round. Imagine this was a circle. And he puts 4 circle poles around an area, and then he puts schach on top. The Gemara is going to explain that Rabbi Yaakov holds it as kosher, because what we do is like this. We take this circle stick and we square it off. We cut off all the parts which make it a circle, make it a square. After we make it a square, we chisel it out further. Not that we actually do any of this. We imagine as if it's been squared off, and then we imagine as if it's been chiseled off further until it's a tefach one way and a tefach the other way. So when I put 4 sticks in the 4 corners, I've actually made 4 walls. I made more than 4 walls. I've made 8 walls, because each pole has got a tefach this way, a tefach that way. This pole has a tefach that way, a tefach that way. And I've got on each corner a wall which is 1 tefach that way, 1 tefach that way. What? A tefach. It's got to be more than a tefach. Oh, very good. This is the Succca of passive rule. The Gemara even tells us that the well, when you'd go to Yerushalayim, everyone would need to drink. The wells were Rishus HaYachid. Why were the wells of Rishus HaYachid? No, Minater, because they were deep. They were 10 tvachim deep and 4 tvachim wide. So you're not allowed to drink water. The problem is how can anybody drink water? Now, what would the answer? Build a wall around the well. The problem is nobody would be able to get in and out. So what they did was they made a special takana that Minater, it's enough. They would make 1 amma by 1 amma, 4 corners, an amma there, an amma there. An amma there, an amma there, an amma there, an amma there, and an amma there. That means each post of the 4 corners, they would make, mustn't use the word corner today, but my son would make it sound too skewed. They would make on each corner, they'd make the amma by an amma. So basically how terribly I am, I think the word corner. And what happens is they make an amma by an amma on each corner, and then what would happen is you would have, that would be min hateva, that would be considered enough to make it to a Rishus HaYachid. Midrabanan, it's not. But for people going to Aliyah Regel, they said that it's good enough. That way you can make a huge area. It's actually one of the pictures we put up. You can make a huge area where loads of animals can come in and drink from the well, and without them being blocked in, and lots of people come and drink from the well without a problem. Now, it is true that normally midrabanan we will not rely on such a wall to consider to a Rishus HaYachid. But over here, because of the circumstances, here we're talking about for a sukkah only a tefach by a tefach. Because he holds that even though that means even though for Shabbos needs an amma by an amma, for Sukkah tefach by a tefach is enough. Let's say in Sadek, we can talk about the Notzah B'Kudei Siboris. He put 4 poles in the ground. If you were to square it off, and then split it, Rashi's the word diyumad. Du always means double, right? Duplex, duet is always 2. So Jumad is 2 amudim, 2 poles. Even though it's only 1 pole, but because we can imagine our minds as if it's been squared off and then split and cut into a corner like a reish, or right, like a bracket. So therefore, it's considered 2 poles. If it's not big enough, a sukkah needs only a tefach Jumad. The Chachamim say no. When it comes to sukkah, we pass the Chachamim. You have to have 2 solid walls, and only the 3rd can be a tefach. So minakon to Chachamim, if you use 4 poles, you make schach on top. It is no good at all. Okay, we'll stop over here. Tomorrow's daf is actually less to do with sukkah and to do with a lot of other things. Right, we've got minachah. Right, so let's try tomorrow count from over here. We still have to work out for Shabbos.